you're so crazy intentional. It's, again, I'm inspired.
Man, you got to have a fan. I feel like you're a fan. He's like, if you're not back here by, tomorrow, you're done. It's a lot of successes there, but lots and lots of failures along the way.
It's so crazy. It really is crazy. People don't understand.
Like, I don't know that anybody talks about that. Like,
I've honestly have not heard anyone else.
They have to believe that what you're telling them is going to help them. It's bananas.
Absolutely bananas. What's up? Welcome to Cladcast. This is my good friend, Jeremy Allen. Jeremy is a mentor in my life. I am recruiting him to be on the board for our nonprofit here at Ironclad Wrestling. He is a spiritual leader, a business leader, an incredible friend. I look up to him in so many ways. Jeremy is the director of development at A for One, which is a nonprofit here in Birmingham. I'll let you talk more about that, but he is a baseball guy. He's owned several businesses and over the years, 5 businesses, I think, in the automotive industry. I met him as my neighbor here when we moved downtown Birmingham, here next door. He has since he's sold his place and all those businesses, and this is the whole thing that we're going to get into and talk about, but to be acting in your gifting. And I'm so inspired in the way that you do that. I want you to talk about that some today. He is an expert in homeschool and in education. Again, why he's the director of development. High level baseball mind, won a national championship in baseball in college, transferred, played at UAB. He's from South Florida. He's a Birmingham man, though, and I'm doing all that I can to keep him here so that he doesn't move back to the sand. So this is my good friend, Jeremy. Jeremy, say hello.
Hey. Good to be here.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, no, it's all those things. I mean, there's a lot of successes there, but lots and lots of failures along the way. So
that's how we all feel.
Yeah.
So basically, if I'm struggling with something, I'm like, hey, I got this thing and I can't figure out business, or I'm with communication, or whatever the case is. He's like, oh, let me tell you a story. And he makes me feel better about my failures.
Sure.
Because he's figured it out. He's already lived that life and has the T-shirt to prove it. And so Jeremy is a guy that I really want the Ironclad family, Ironclad Nation, wherever the heck you are. If you are an Ironclad person, you need to know Jeremy, because he is highly influential on me and on all things here. God, there's so many things I just want to say all at once. This guy's the man, and we talk almost daily. I'll wake up on any given day to he's a 4 a.m. guy, and I've got some thoughts from his time in the Word or prayer or something, and I mean my Bible study stuff in the morning will just be hair on fire. And so typically when we're talking, I just like space out and it'll be like in another dimension. So we kind of moved over so we could look at each other and talk. We've had 100 of these conversations, and every time we do, half the time MJ's in the room and we say, yeah, we needed that on camera. Like this is the kind of stuff that everybody needs to talk about. And so I had the privilege of being on your first podcast.
Yes, awesome.
Which was super cool. And so we came in today and he was like, hey, so like, what are we even talking about? What are we doing? And Jeremy is, oh man, I want to let you talk. So let me back up. You were just a guy, you did not have a grappling background, any of the things you've got. Tell me about your family. Let's back up, because people don't know you yet, and I want them to know who you are. I want them to know that you're a guy like all these parents that could be watching this. Like, you are a parent, and you're freaking awesome, inspiring parent. I think the way that you do those things is amazing. Decisions that you've made for your family, you're so crazy intentional. It's, again, I'm inspired if you can't hear it in my voice now. Tell people who you are, what you're doing, family, business, all the stuff, and then I'm going to start asking you all kinds of questions, because I think that what you have found and what you've discovered is the natural conclusion for all of us. We just don't find it out in time. So without further ado.
Yeah, wow, thank you for all the nice things. Man, you got to have a fan. I feel like you're a fan. So, it's, in my life, I think even as a young age, I always felt odd. And I didn't always have a lot of fans because I think that my thinking was different. And so a lot of people just didn't understand a lot of things that I was thinking or talking about or whatever. Yeah. And so, I think my parents, my mom and dad, were huge supporters of me. Always my biggest fan. My mom, I just got a chance to spend some time with her a couple weeks ago, and I just can't even tell you how much support a mom can give you and a dad can give you.
Yeah.
Just thinking about back in college when I came home and kind of had a riff with my coach, my junior college coach, and I wanted to not go back. And he's like, if you're not back here by tomorrow, you're done. And my dad and I'm like, I'm not going back. And my dad coming in at 4:00 in the morning and saying, Jeremy, get up. I got to take it for you. You got to get up. And he didn't care either way. He would just as soon me be home and help him run his business and be with the family. Yeah. But he knew how important it was for me to finish what I started. So like that support was huge. My mom's support. I mean, there's no bigger fan of mine than my mom. And so I think that was an incredible foundation for me to kind of be who I felt I should be. And, like not being recruited out of high school, I was an average player, but I just always had this insatiable desire to go beyond what my own station or what other people said I was, or I always just had this desire to do better and be better. And so I kind of forced my way onto a junior college team in South Alabama, and had a coach that really helped mold me into a man and forced me to be better. I got better physically, emotionally, mentally through that process. It's kind of a hardening process in my life. And so, a lot of those things, those early things shaped me to becoming who I am today, which is really evolving, really on a daily basis, which is fine. We know. I think I heard a cosmologist say we know like 1% of the universe or less. Like it's so small that we just don't know much about anything, honestly. And I think that if you think you got it figured out, I think it's a recipe for disaster. And so you just have to be continually curious. And so that's kind of been my MO. And I think that's probably one of my greatest strengths is just my curiosity is, and being a slave to that curiosity, just being willing to just do it. And, different parts of my life I've been more willing to follow that curiosity. But, I've been married 20 years this year. So
awesome.
My wife, Michelle,
coming up Wednesday anniversary, not to put you on the spot.
December 13th.
Okay.
And so 20 years, it's been incredible. We had, got pregnant. We were both 30 years old. My wife, Michelle, got pregnant, and we'd been married about 4 years, and then we proceeded to have 5 children in 5 years. And so
I had 2 and 2, and I know how terrible that was.
Yeah.
5 and 5 is
bananas.
Absolutely bananas.
Yeah,
Holy
and I don't even remember half of it, tell you the truth. Michelle kept a blog, and thankfully she did, because I go back and I'm like, I don't remember any of this. And I'm grateful for that. But we decided when my oldest son, who just turned 16 a couple of weeks ago, he was 4 years old, and really just kind of, I was reading biographies of all of our founding fathers, and I was just kind of cruising, really just kind of churning through them, and I just had this sense that we don't talk like they used to, we don't understand things like they used to, we don't think about topics that they used to. And I'm like, okay, is this progress or is this regression? And I just...
How old were you when you were thinking about this?
I was probably in my early to mid 30s.
Okay.
I just came to the conclusion that we were going backwards, and the way we thought, the way we spoke, and I was like, okay, why? And I came to the conclusion that it was the education system, and
that kind of leads me into what I was
Sure.
going to ask you about. So like you've got 5 kids, you'll homeschool,
Mm-hmm.
and so my background is teacher. I went to school for education and sports management, and we've bonded over this. I feel like I'm repeating the conversation for you and I, but trying to tell the listeners that like I was going through all my education stuff, and I was deeply like invested in the teaching theory of things. What was the way? What was the ideal way to learn? Right, optimal way to learn. And when we learned all these things in teaching theory, and I'm trying not to dork out and use all the terms, but we learned this is what you should be doing ideally, and then they're like, oh, but we're going to do B, and B was like, hey, the modern classroom where I went to school really has a renowned education program, and they're known for being kind of forward thinkers, and hey, this is the direction education is headed. And I had this crisis of, but that's not, wait a minute, like that doesn't agree with what we just learned. And so when you started talking to me about this originally, I was immediately on board. So talking about it, there's a couple of ideas in there. There's like the one-room classroom. You talked about the average time that a student in public school gets, because I think used to be, if you were homeschooled, like you were kind of the oddball, but now it's becoming the way, because everybody is seeing the failure, and really COVID showcased
Sure.
that.
the wasted time. The wasted time was kind of
Yes.
the wake up call.
Yeah, I'm just gonna turn to you. Go ahead. So like, talk to me about that. Like, there's the one room classroom, the amount of one-on-one time you get. Like, help go through some of that.
Yeah, I mean the way we got to we classically educate, and we're part of a co-op called Classical Conversations, and some people love it, some people hate it. There's a bunch of people on either side. You get on the web, and it can get wild there. But ultimately, it's a methodology of classically educating your children. And when you mean classically, basically is that you go to original texts. So if you want to learn about something, you go to the guy that knows the most about it.
Yeah.
And you don't go to a textbook.
Yeah.
Because your textbook is a abbreviated version of the thing.
Yeah.
And it's somebody's opinion on what they thought was important. And so
If you want to learn from Shakespeare, you go to Shakespeare.
100%. Yeah, I mean 100%. And so, anyway, when I was kind of reading these biographers, I realized that almost in every sense that they were in a tutoring, educational setting.
Yeah.
So whether it was a lawyer, or most of the teachers then were Anglican priests.
Yep.
So the Anglican priests were a group of learned clergy, and they had all the classical background and education, and so they were able to impart pass that on to their students. But it was always a one-on-one or small group type method. And so because real learning happens in a give and take, Socratic, back and forth, questioning, answering. Because what happens is I may be trying to relate something to you, but you may be hearing it completely different.
Yeah, when you say Socratic, like that's the thing that when I think of that, like the classical education, I literally think of Plato and Socrates.
Correct.
Right? Like
Yes.
that's immediately, that was the stuff that really, at the same time I was going through those education courses I was just taking all these ethics courses because I just loved it. I was like, am I supposed to be an attorney? Like, am I going to be a lawyer? Like I'm enjoying this so much,
It was curiosity.
It was those curiosity things about understanding the principles and the why behind things and rationale and reasoning. It was just very influential. But I mean, that's what Socrates did. He had a group of boys, and he was teaching them, and those people influenced the way the world happened for forever. Like literally go back. It's like there was Jesus and the disciples, and like what other group do we go back to and go, this group of men really changed the world, right? And
yeah,
I think
and they were
Plato
questioning norms. They were
just
questioning
saying why everywhere.
Why, and they're like, but why? And I think that ultimately, even in teaching like baseball or wrestling or whatever, if you're trying to convey something, the pupil has to buy in, or else there's no change. There's no change. And so in a one-on-one setting, if you are a good teacher, you'll say, do you understand what I'm saying? And then and then explain to me what I'm trying to tell you. It's a good chance they're going to tell you something differently than what you're trying to get across. And so, and not only that, but they have to believe that what you're telling them is going to help them.
Oh my gosh. I just had a rant. So I've got 2 guys that are doing basically homeschool stuff. And so we're training during the daytime, and it's turned into, we've done private lessons in small groups for forever. That's how I found my way in coaching, right? That's what Ironclad's been based on that for forever. But today specifically, we had just a rant. We're watching film and whatever, and I was like, listen, I don't need this. Like, I don't need to do this. This is not for me, because I could tell we were kind of at a point of them being lectured to, and I was like, I don't need to tell you. Like, this is not for me, and so I said, the reason we're watching film is to connect that what I'm telling you, you believe in. You see this on film, and the only reason I'm here is because you won't do this on your own.
Right.
Like, this is guided thing.
Right.
Like, if you would do this on your own and ask the right questions, you would already do this. But so I'm here just to mentor you along in this, and the whole conversation centered around belief of if I tell you to do, when
it's revelation. It's revelation.
Yes, which is, I could just write that word huge. We're going to get onto that.
Right.
But like in the development space, like athletes want, so when they get to about 17, this is a while. I've literally told this to the guys today. There's something that naturally happens in us as humans. And I was listening to another guy, I don't remember, maybe it was Jordan Peterson, and he was saying, when you get to about 17, I think it was Jordan Peterson. He said, when you turn about 17 and you become old enough that you could procreate, like, you start to hate the men above you. You start to resent them. And so that naturally happens so that you'll leave your tribe, go find a mate in another tribe, and then y'all can come back and be a part of the village when you're 22, 24, 25. And so about the time that your brain fully develops, if you're a male, 25, then you come back and you're a contributing member of society,
sure.
Right? But you get to about 17, and this natural process takes over, right? And so what it looks like for us is you get to be 17, and these kids don't want to be coached anymore, or they become, they get where they can drive, they got new freedom all of a sudden, and then around 16, 17, they're like little mini adults, and they start to think that they've got it all figured out. And so
I've got one.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
My favorite saying is, hey, right now, while you know everything, you need to go ahead and make your first couple million, because you ain't going to, by the time you're 20, 22, 25, you're going to have forgotten all that stuff, and you'll be back at square one.
That's right.
And so we were just on that thing today, and I was trying to get them reconnected to that in film of you need to see on film what I'm talking about, so that because when they're juniors in high school, approximate, you start telling them what to do, and they're like, yeah, they're not listening. Now,
That's right.
When they're 8, 10, 12, they look at you with big eyes, like they're talking to Santa Claus about their wish list. But when they get old enough, they don't believe anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so you start to lose them, and so having to reconnect that and create that belief that they need the thing that you're talking to them about. And so we just at a spiritual level, we were doing that today in this very room. And
Can we talk about that for just a minute?
Because
I'm really curious. I hear all the time, and I know you hear this all the time from parents. Man, I just can't coach my own kids.
It's huge.
It feels wrong to me in some ways.
Yeah.
Like something about it doesn't feel right. And I'm thinking, what makes it to where the kid doesn't believe that what you're telling them as a parent is going to help them?
Dude, it's so bizarre. Yeah. Let's work through this idea.
Yeah.
Because I don't so when I first started coaching, my thing was, hey, don't coach your kid. I was 22, and I was like, hey, don't coach your kid at home. Just don't freaking do it. Because I knew they were going to go home and teach them something that I didn't want them to learn at practice, right? Or they would butcher whatever we were doing at practice. And then I kind of came full circle, and at some point I was like, if you're a dad and my kid plays baseball, I want to throw in the front yard. It's part of me being a dad. I don't have sons. I don't throw baseball with my daughters. They don't play softball. But, it's like a thing that I wanted to do if I have a son, you know what I mean? And so I was like, man, and I think that wrestling's this natural thing that we just do as humans. And so I was like, we've got to, I can't tell them not to do it. They're going to do it, and they should be able to do it. So then we started creating resources to give to them to like, hey, I know you're going to do this at home. Go do this and let it even be productive, right? And here's some healthy boundaries you can do to create and have fun and do it well or whatever. But like what is that? What is it that everybody wants what's best for their kid, right? But at some point, so I think that as a kid, as the son, it becomes a conflict of you're looking for the approval, the love, the validation from your parents. And so when dad is giving you criticism, constructive or otherwise, right, that the love factor, the love bias that the kid needs, that the things they need from their parents, at the point that it becomes, we've hit that wall of, I need to push you on through, the parent can't push them on through anymore, because to push you on through, I need to be critical, and they are going, hey, you're not filling up my love bucket anymore.
Yeah, I reel against that.
Okay.
I feel it feels wrong to me. And I tell you why, because that's basically saying you also can't educate your kids, right? Education is not easy, I promise you.
Right.
You're going to have to be critical of them to push them through education. I can't even tell you how many times that we've had knock them down, drag them out about what
dude. Like, I've tried just teaching. I had this bonding moment with you because I was just trying to get my daughter through 7th grade math, and I was like, I'm melting. You're like, oh.
Well,
buddy.
and part of the reason is because part of the reason a lot of parents have problem with homework with kids is because ultimately the kids don't view them as the authority in that matter. They're saying, oh, the teacher this, the teacher that. They say the teacher wants me to do it this way or that way. The teacher's the authority. But in a homeschool setting, you're the authority, and so there's a level of reception there. But the fact is that most of education is not X's and O's; it's behavior. It's a character development, and so when I'm thinking about like finances, for instance.
Yeah.
If you're trying to help somebody with finances, they can be the smartest people ever, and their finances can be wrecked because it's about behavior. It's not about the X's and O's. Ultimately, the behavior is really what it's about. Okay, so most of the coaching is a interaction of trying to adjust behavior, not necessarily adjust the X's and O's. Because ultimately, if coaching my kid, I'm thinking about.
So let me make that a little more practical. Explain that, and let's use baseball as the thing.
Yeah.
We talk about wrestling all the time. Let's use baseball because our culture understands baseball, and you're the expert on baseball. So I need to correct a behavior with my son, daughter, not an XO.
Yeah. So what I've realized is that they have to believe that what you're telling them is going to help them.
Is the answer.
Right. And so a lot of parents don't know how to take the time to really, really explain. So I'll stop what I'm doing if like for instance on a throwing technique, if I know that if they continue to throw this way, that they're going to hurt themselves and they're going to endanger their ability to play. To me, it's a health and safety issue, and so that I've got to be able to convey. And so I have to say, okay, I'm going to video you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to go find people who have thrown like you that have had surgery. I'm going to try to explain from a science perspective why throwing this way is not optimal for you.
Which ultimately is big B word that we always use is a belief issue.
That's correct. Belief.
It's about belief.
It's belief. And so if your child doesn't believe that what you're telling them is going to help them, then 100% they are not going to do what you want them to do.
Okay, let's dive into that.
Okay.
Hey, real quick, today's podcast, Meal Fit sponsored. Thank you, Thomas Cox. We got the Meal Fit fridge out here. This thing is freaking awesome. We got the snack packs. It's got protein packs. There's bowls. There's salads, wraps, all the things. Here at the gym at Ironclad HQ, come in. There's a fridge. Swipe your card. Open it up. Take whatever you want. There's lemonades. The strawberry lemonade is it should be illegal. I mean, it's so good.
So good.
I don't want to know how much sugar's in it or not. It just tastes delicious. It's in there. It's amazing. We've made that easy for parents. Anybody here, you're just in the downtown area, just dude, come pop in, get you a healthy food, some healthy food. It's cheap, bro. The bowl I had was like $7, $8 or something, right? It saved me from spending $20 down the street. That's awesome. It's been a crazy, awesome solution for our families who are practice all things. Also, big thanks to Mr. Jocko. They are huge sponsors of the P&L. As partners of the P&L, they have partnered with us and offer some amazing deals on amazing products. Jocko's sons and daughters are wrestlers. He's obviously jiu-jitsu, black belt, OG in the game, Navy SEAL, all things, Jocko Podcast. He's amazing. I think he's the #1 leadership speaker on earth right now. But amazing products. They all taste delicious. We just put these things in the fridge today. We got our original pack in, and we placed a fat order to have all that stuff here, so we can just keep providing healthy stuff for our people. We got rid of all the Bang energy drinks and sodas and all the things. So just trying to align with that. Big thanks to both of them because they are supporting our program and make a lot of things that we're doing possible. All right. So big thanks to you guys. All right. So we closed out a second ago with the big word belief. And so you text me one morning, and I remember like waking up and seeing the message, and I read it 7 or 8 times in a row, and then we got on the phone, and you texted me these words: we do not have a discipline issue, we have a belief issue. Do you want to go first or me?
Yeah,
because it was you. I was like, what? Like what? I mean, I mean, this was your moment. It was your revelation, and so. Revelation is a beautiful thing. Go. This is your thing. I feel like I'm gonna steal your thunder if I start saying it. So
yeah, like I grew up in a Christian home, and I had a real experience with God, where I felt that He was real. I knew that He was real at a really young age, but it didn't. I lived a lot of my youth and into my teens and adult years, not doing the things that I should have been doing.
Yeah.
And so the reason was because I did not believe that ultimately it would be beneficial in my life. And so I was driving on the interstate one day after a long drive, and I had this revelation that throughout life, without belief, there is no discipline. Now, ultimately, you can have discipline without belief, but it won't be lasting.
It runs out.
I don't think it gives you joy.
No. So New Year's resolution. Hey, by God, I'm getting up at 6 a.m., getting my workout in, and I'm gonna New Year, new me, baby. Here we go, right? And so you just painfully grind out that discipline, but eventually your motivation runs out, right? And so there's BJ Fogg has the motivation. And like difficulty scale, right? And so there's an action curve, and it's pretty complicated thing. Basically, when motivation's high, you can do like hard things, but as your motivation drops so just a little bit, there's this curve that goes through the thing, and you fall below the action curve, and now you no longer do it. So as motivation slumps, you fall below, and then it basically never happens again. And so the discipline thing is, I think, in order for discipline to work, motivation has to be high. But if you have belief, like it's really like the positive version of discipline. Like I look at it as belief is positive and discipline is negative. Like discipline is forced. And listen, discipline is a real thing, right? It's not like it doesn't exist.
No, 100%.
It's just a negative connotation. Like how much do people beat themselves up because, golly, like you got negative self-talk because you don't lack the discipline, and then you start thinking you've got like, what's wrong with me? You know, I don't know if everybody else struggles with that, but I've been the worst about that for forever.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Yeah,
and it's belief, in my opinion. You know, Jocko's a 4:30 in the morning guy, and the fact is that he would say that he just does it no matter how he feels, because ultimately he believes, and the belief has turned to, I know that if I get up at 4:30, I can get done all the things that I want to get done. Yeah. And the benefits to my life is what I'm looking for.
Right.
He wants the benefit so much that he's willing to squash his own desires, flesh,
Yeah.
whatever,
100%.
whatever. And so he has a belief. His belief has turned into discipline.
Yeah.
And so, and it might have been discipline at first, but there's a reciprocation there that happens. And it's kind of like with your wife. If you show love to your wife on a consistent basis, well, ultimately, love comes back to you.
In return, 100%.
Love comes back. And so if you keep doing that, then the reciprocation is there. And I know sometimes it doesn't always happen all the time, but ultimately, it's a reciprocation.
Right.
And so I think discipline and belief really work hand in hand. And I think without belief, discipline is difficult.
1,000,000%. I mean, it's just like, dude, that idea runs so deep. It's become a thesis around here all the time. Like, it's a belief issue. It's a belief issue.
The idea that I thought of really was if I had, Jake, if you were sick and had some terminal disease, and I said, Jake, if you do this, 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 and this, you'll get better and you'll live. You would do anything.
Well, the obvious example is chemotherapy. I've used chemo to talk about. I'm like, hey, chemotherapy kills you.
It sure does.
Right? It's a matter of fact. It kills you. But when you have cancer and you believe that cancer is going to kill you, and the only way to kill all of it
You'll do
is
anything.
chemo, then you will subject yourself to chemotherapy.
That's right.
And if they said you had to run a marathon every day, you would do that.
100%.
But it doesn't cure cancer.
But if you had to believe, if you believed at 100% that was going to solve your problem, you would do it no matter what.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how hard.
It is a belief thing, period.
Yeah, and really to circle back around to coaching your kids have to believe. And so if they're not doing what you ask them to do, it's because they don't believe.
That's
right.
Fact.
So, I think about somebody that we know together. I grew up with a kid who was All-American at Oklahoma State. Jeff Reagan, Oklahoma or Oklahoma State?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So Jeff and I grew up together.
So Jeff Reagan, wrestling guy, longtime coach of the Citadel. He's been coaching at Woodward Academy for a number of years now in
He's
Georgia.
back in my hometown.
And he's just moved back to Florida, but incredibly successful. He was an All-American. Was he national champ or All-American?
All-American.
Two-time All-American at Oklahoma State. He was the coach of the Citadel when I was in college, so I was groomed to hate him.
Sure.
But then, and he left there to Woodward. He's had success everywhere.
Right, but his dad was his coach. And so, the fact is I know it's not easy.
There's a way to do it.
But it's worthwhile.
There's a way to do it and do it well.
And I think about all these, but I think about Jeff. Jeff is, because of his dad's willingness to coach his son, he's affected thousands and thousands of kids for the better. Because he was able to pass that stuff on to Jeff, who Jeff in turn made it his own. And I haven't talked to Jeff in a long time. Maybe I'll catch up with him, but sometime.
Yeah, we need to reach out to him.
But anyway, so his dad's obedience to passing on to his son what he thought was important has affected the lives of thousands.
Do you think so? I'm thinking of wrestling specifically. I'm not an expert in the other things, but in wrestling, coaching your son, I've seen it done wrong so many times. And this is a thing that you and I have talked about before, because I don't have, I want to believe in what you're saying, but I don't have the vision of how to do it correctly. I think that it can be done. I just don't know how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
And so in the wrestling space, huge anecdotal things for me were that Tom Brands did not coach and develop his son Nelson, right? And that John Smith at Oklahoma State did not develop his son JoJo Smith. He turned him over.
At
to
what
other
age?
guys.
At what age though?
Well, JoJo was in junior high when I first. I'm trying to think. This was 2012, so I don't know how old JoJo would have been in 2012. But Coleman was coaching him full time, and he said John doesn't coach him at all. He's like, he hasn't coached him in a number of years.
And there could be listen.
And so whatever those other reasons are, there's I'm sure there's other outliers that make that a thing, but longtime coach at Iowa City West who just passed away. His name's escaping me right now. Legendary coach in Iowa. He just passed away last year, I guess, year before last year. He was coaching Nelson Brands. I remember seeing them in Atlanta at a tournament. I was like, what's this joker? Who's this kid that he's down here with? You know, he wound up wrestling Michael Land and beating him in a war of a match. Anyways, but I remember thinking like, what the heck? And I was like, oh my gosh, Tom is doing the same thing that John Smith is doing. They're not coaching their boys. And I've seen that with lots of others too, that it's just very easy to get to mess. So the path is narrow, right? I mean, I think that's the answer. Like it's the path is narrow. I think for the 98, the 99%, you shouldn't coach your son because the path is narrow. But I think that I do believe that if you can walk the way of that and navigate it well, that the rewards are significant.
Yeah, they are. And I think that, like with my 16-year-old, you know, he's this is the first year he's playing high school baseball, well, at the public school, and he's got coaches. And I'm not coaching him on a daily basis anymore. And so I have it turned over to a certain extent. But what has happened is we still train together, you know, whether it's on the weekends. We still talk about what he's doing. I'm still coaching him. I'm really, more than anything, I'm guiding him through his own learning process at this point. Because when they get to a certain age, they're learning on their own. You're not feeding them. You might give them prompts, but you're just guiding them through their own learning process. Listen, it doesn't matter how good a relationship you have. It doesn't matter how good you explain it. If your kid don't want to be coached in that thing, you can't do it. So like I have 4 sons, and my 2 of my sons are baseball players. 2 of them are not. There's 2 of my sons that are not baseball players. There's nothing in the world that I can do and effectively coach them at baseball because they don't want to play baseball.
So that's maybe that's more of what I observe and think about, because like inside the sport of wrestling, like it's freaking difficult.
Sure,
dude. Like it's hard, right? I got 2 kids out here that they're All-Americans. They want to wrestle at a Division I level. They want to be NCAA champs one day, and like ultimately, if I put them to work and I'm like, hey, all right, here's what you're doing. If I give them the task and walk away, at some point they naturally, because it's hard. Like if I'm like, hey, do this, and it's difficult, they naturally do this, and so I have to get back over there and give them a little nudge and get them back going again. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
because ultimately you can see past the horizon. They can't see past the horizon because they haven't been there. And so that coaching is vital and important for them to be able to say, okay, what you're doing now is going to affect down the road. And so you have to you still be engaged. And
so how do you, I'm thinking in practice, right? So one of my pet peeves is for dad on the side at practice to be standing over the edge of the mat and trying to tell his son, I'm like, get your ass over there and sit down, or go outside, or get on the mat, because we're doing jiu-jitsu when this is over with, and you can learn how difficult it is. Like, so for most people, there's a very big disconnect, and I know this is like a lot of those biases or communication or understanding knowledge gaps are gone for you because you grapple, which is a whole nother thing, specific to wrestling. But like, so I have more respect that I would give someone else with that opinion, like infinitely more respect for all the kind of pre-qualifications that you have. But like inside of wrestling, it is so difficult. How do you take, man, I've got some notes from like some vision stuff that I was having, and I was asking the same question. Like if you're sending your son out there to wrestle and it's painful and it's negative and they're getting their butt whipped and whatever, right? And they don't really want to do it, but you know that, hey, this is ultimately what's best for you, right? Like I think that wrestling should be required for young men.
Yeah, same.
And I can't speak for ladies. The benefits are not mutually exclusive, but my only perspective is as a man. And I believe it should be like Sparta, bro. Like I think that the things that you learn on every level, mentally, physically, emotional, spiritual, maturity, development, stress management, all these things, we could get on a whole nother rant about that.
And we talked a lot about that in our first.
Yes, we did. Yeah, on your episode. If you haven't seen that, we need to put the link in. We'll put that in the description here so they can go find that too, because we talked a lot about that. I'm a long ways getting to this point, but if you know that wrestling is best for my son, but I'm subjecting him to like pain and discomfort, and he doesn't like it because it's hard, but I know that you need to do this hard thing, like you need to lift weights, how do I navigate that as a dad, or how does someone navigate that as a dad when it is difficult? Of like, hey, this is just a thing that we do.
Yeah, that's a oof. This
Like-
is something that I'm going through right now. You know, for the last couple of years all of my kids have been here training. My daughter, kickboxing and jiu-jitsu when it's available.
Yeah.
She really fought us on it, but it's really given her a lot of confidence and
Change her in a very positive way.
100%. And she's going to be back in here in the winter doing that thing. She loves it now because I forced her through it. You know, my oldest son is playing high school baseball. His time is limited, and so I'm not really forcing him back into the gym.
Yeah.
But ultimately, him and I need to be doing jiu-jitsu together as a form of intimacy. And it sounds weird, and I know a lot of people don't understand it. My wife thinks it's weird, but
there's something to it.
There is, and
it burns away the peripheral. Like, man, it is.
We talk about it in the podcast, and my wife said, when we were talking about it in the podcast, she said, if you said intimacy one time, you said it like 3 times. I was like, listen, I can't.
There's not I don't know how else to describe it.
Right.
I don't know how else to describe it.
Right, and so we were just talking about the other day. Maybe there's some type of rhythm vibration that happens.
There's something when two guys are. I'm a Navy SEAL and you fight for the Taliban and I kill you in close quarters combat. Like they talk about like the nightmare of that, of like, hey, I remember their faces or whatever else, right? Because there's an intimacy of like we were connected, we were touching, right?
Sure.
And so like, not to be weird about it, right? But like, I mean, it's a thing. Like you get to know, you can feel when someone quits, when they let up, when they go hard, right? My brothers and I mean, we're in business together. We have disagreements, but man, we can get on the mat and scrap. We scrapped last night, me and my brother, and like when it's done, doesn't matter what's going on. You get done and you're like, hey, dude, I love you.
Yeah.
Because he's my brother, and it just burns those things away, you know? And so
at the moment, it's not important.
At the moment, nothing else matters.
And so what happens if you do that more, those things maybe become less important. The things that you thought were important about the things that annoy you about each other become less important. Yeah. And it show, at Sunday I brought my 15-year-old in, my next oldest son, and him and I have kind of been not great. And so I'm like, man, I got to get in there and we got to have some FaceTime, some mat time. And so we did, and it completely changed the vibe in my house.
It's so crazy. It really is crazy. People don't understand. Like,
I don't know that anybody talks about that. Like,
I've honestly have not heard anyone else. You and I talk about it a lot because it's like a thing that we've got a lens on. But I haven't heard anyone else talk about it. Maybe because it sounds so edgy when you try to communicate it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't even know the best way to communicate it other than it's true. And so my 15-year-old, he started wrestling late in junior high school. Yeah. And it's tough because he's in the room with some killers.
And he showed up with like all the year-round kids. Like imagine trying to start playing baseball at 15. It would be difficult. You're behind, except in wrestling, you don't strike out. Like they grind your nose in the mat and rip on your shoulder or something. You know?
Right. And he did not want to do it and fought me, but it's like going to church. We're going. And we're going to be consistent. We're going no matter what. You're going to do it for X amount of time, maybe not forever, but ultimately. And so at this point, he can't. He's not ready. He's not ready to just put him out there in a high school wrestling mat.
When you start late like that, it's not a natural flow, right? Like you said, it's like church, and so that kind of. I don't mean to interrupt you there, but it kind of is a segue to like it's about to be youth wrestling season, right? I mean, it's October 2nd, I think today, or 3rd, whatever today is. And so like November through February, we are doing youth wrestling with these kids. And so I always tell people like, hey, I'm probably the most biased person like on paper, but really it's not because, my bias is not because I just love wrestling or this is what I do for a living.
You believe.
I believe in this, which is why I do it for a living. Right. And so because I've seen the benefits. And so like, we have youth wrestling. It's basically an outreach of like, hey, your young boys especially need this. Again, the benefits are not gender exclusive. There's incredible opportunity for females to wrestle. I personally believe they should be separated, at least at some age. They should definitely be separated. But like, what So same thing. You had a 7, 8, 10-year-old, like, I mean, as early as 5 or 6, but 7, 8, 10, you got to have them on.
Yeah.
I think in that window, you have to have them on a mat. You should have them out on a mat. You want them to be on a mat because of what it's going to develop, right?
Right.
And
My now 11 and 12-year-old will 100% do youth wrestling this year.
Yep.
They don't want to do it, but they're not going to fight me about it because they're gonna do it. But like I was talking about, we were talking about this the other day.
even if they don't compete, like just the training, like
That's right.
because, like, look, you don't have to. Everybody don't have to be a wrestler. You don't have to have a gold medal. Like, you don't have to wear a singlet in public. You can wear shorts, like fight shorts and a rash guard, whatever. But like, dude, when you get to middle school, you're gonna have to change in front of other other middle school kids. What are you gonna do when you're? I mean, I'm thinking back 7th grade. Some kid gets punked in PE, right, or in the locker room when there's no chaperones around, and like all of a sudden, if you get punked, like you're kind of the punk for forever. Like you're all of a sudden you're the victim. Like this identity thing happens, right? Or some guy's messing with you and you settle it and let him know, hey, bro, that ain't going down like that, and that's the end of it.
That's right.
Or you see someone else getting messed with, and you go sheepdog it and shut it all down and go, hey, we don't. This is not how men act.
That's my
people.
motivation for my kids is giving them the tools that they can be successful in life. Listen, we live in an evil world. There's no question about it. They're going to confront evil people. They have to have the tools to be able to confront evil.
Bingo.
And so that is and not only the tools, but they have to have the confidence. And so even the last couple of years, the training of my 16-year-old, and he's physically in good shape and good condition, but he feels more confident that he can take a dude's back and choke him.
That's right.
Like, I asked him the other day.
Completely physically literate.
I asked him, I said, if you got into a scuffle, we were talking about him and I, and he was saying, what would you do? He goes, I would try to get close to you as I could and try to take your back. Right?
It's like, so, hey, you're not going to be successful, but at least you got a plan.
That's right. That's right. Like
with me, you got another teenager, you're gonna be all right. But.
Right. But my point is like he has tools, some tools now, and it's not like, and it's not fake.
It's not fake. To me, it's required. Like, I can't imagine, like, it's like swimming. Like, dude, if you can't swim, every time you're near water, you're uncomfortable.
Which we force all of our kids to swim every summer.
Dude,
right.
Like,
So what my kids have been doing swim teams since my oldest was 4 every summer without fail.
They're like fish.
They're competent in the water. And I feel good about it.
And you talked about your daughter, Gracie. She's tough, friend. Like she was just a little girl when you started bringing her in, and I knew she didn't really want to do it, and she did it.
Uncomfortable.
And there's times that she's really having fun, and there's times that she doesn't love to do it. But my daughters weren't on the mat or doing jiu-jitsu or anything really, just because my ex-wife was like not about that at all.
When I understand, I understand that. Yeah.
And our communication gap didn't allow us to probably work through that as well. So they didn't, in the years that I would have liked them to be doing that, they weren't. And so they came in after Gracie had been doing those things for a long time, and it was crazy to watch them side by side, because I watched Gracie go from being a little girl to like, oh, she's confident, and she's like, able to punk my daughters, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like, now she wasn't doing that to them or whatever, right? But like, it was. I noticed when they came in and were side by side, the growth that had happened in Gracie. It was really profound, which I'm sure that you're well aware of. But that development happens across the board. Like, in a season of wrestling, kids change. Like, they 100%. Really freaking change. I was a baseball football player, and good Lord, like, why did I choose wrestling, right? I mean, I think the Lord chose wrestling for me, really. But I was a decent ball player, like, growing up, whatever. I mean, I was like on the cusp of. I think I made the A-team All-Stars every year, but I was like one of the last kids, And then we got to like middle school, and I started wrestling, and there was like a change that happened. In fact, I didn't play baseball one year. I took a season off of baseball and was like just wrestling. And when I came back to baseball, I had gotten exponentially better.
Sure.
It was bizarre. If I was going to take that year. It was 8th grade for me. If I was going to take that year, was it 8th grade or 9th grade? I guess I didn't go out for baseball in the spring of 8th grade. Yeah. So, and I came back in 9th grade. That's what it was. So, like, dude, it's so crazy. if I was going to go back and I wanted to be good at baseball, if baseball was going to be my thing, I would have just continued throwing.
Right.
But that time on the mat, learning how to be physically literate and move my body effectively, like efficiently and effectively, to develop power in my hips and move laterally and it developed my hips so I could be low to field the ground or stay in a stance, whatever, right? It completely changed. I mean, I like had never really even hit homers, and then all of a sudden I come out and I'm like blasting the ball, and I was like, bro, what happened? You know, and I didn't understand it then. Looking back, I had become physically literate.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I'll give you a small example. My youngest, David, who is a really, really good athlete, really physical athlete. He's not a baseball player, but he came in here and was wrestling, and you guys do all your warm-up, somersaults, round-offs, tumbling, backflips. Well, he figured out he liked it, and so he started doing it. And this year, he does dive team for the first time this summer, and he's really good at it because that informed his curiosity. And so just trying new things, doing new things informed his curiosity. It's pretty remarkable.
That is so wild. Okay, so I'm going to jump into that a little bit. Okay, so you're talking about David and doing the tumbling and all things, whatever. Okay, and so there's this idea, this long-standing idea of being a well-rounded athlete, right? And typically in America that looks like baseball, football, basketball, and develops this athlete and kind of the all-American kid, if you will, right? And so modern coaching theory is about constraints, right? It's called a constraints-led approach. And there's like stuff that's kind of constraints, and I know constraints is like y'all, this is your language. You're deep in on this and introduced me to the ideas initially. But so there's a couple of ways, there's kind of iterations or levels of understanding of the theory of constraints as it relates to coaching and athlete development, okay? But like if you look at a kid who plays baseball, football, basketball, each one of those, because of the game and the rule set and what it is, develop certain different skills. And, basketball helps baseball and baseball helps this one, right? They're all different, right? The kids who are throwing and catching are good on a football field. The receivers are really translate really well to basketball, or a guy that's doing punt or a receiver, whatever, like fielding a fly ball, like they can judge the ball. Lots of different things, okay? Ultimately, so now you're seeing what's become really popular is I don't care what sport you do, is for them to go do strength conditioning. Because we see NFL guys training, doing these strength conditioning, they're throwing med balls and they're doing different plyo stuff. And so strength and conditioning, speed and agility, if you will, for youth athletes has become this thing. But dude, when you watch it, if you start to look at what they're doing and you assign a value to it, it's so ridiculous. It's great for getting your phone out and getting a video of and put it on the internet, but it's like just this status thing. It drives me insane because it is not optimized for development, right? And so, I mean, the speed and agility things are super optimized for profit, which is a whole nother topic that we could dive into and discuss. But if you are looking at development, so I was watching these guys. They're getting ready for the NFL Combine or something, right? And this guy dude, I wish I could find this video to pull up, but this guy's trying to balance, and there's two other coaches who are hitting him with a blocking pad to try to off balance him in different directions, and he was just trying to stay balanced. And I was like, dude, that's literally the first 20 seconds on your feet if you're wrestling.
Right.
You're always off balance.
Right.
It's the first idea that we talk about is balance. It's the most important skill. But the idea is that it's irregular, and so they gave some 11-word term for off-balance training thing, and you can do this for $350 a month. And I was like, dude, just freaking wrestle. What are you doing? Just wrestle. Because ultimately, wrestling is the premium in speed and agility training, in balance, in coordination, in physical literacy,
in proprioception,
in
sure.
proprioception,
yeah,
in thinking under stress. It's so many. There's so many.
Controlling your heart rate.
I mean, dude, literally, I could just go on and on and on.
I wish I had
nerd out about this, but it just in terms of development, I know, not even I believe, it's become I know that wrestling is the answer. And so I think one of the things that I really love is unknowing over here, like you were running this parallel journey, you had no affinity to grappling or to wrestling initially, like you're a baseball guy.
Yeah.
But you were obsessed with your kids' development and with education, and naturally you found this conclusion, and like that was kind of thing. When we first met, you're like, hey, listen, my health has been bad or whatever else, but like, I mean, you basically came here to kick the tires and go, hey, y'all offer wrestling and jiu-jitsu? Like, how does that work? For what ages? And how does it, and you just came in, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. Because you could speak the language of jiu-jitsu. And I said, oh, well, have you been training? What's up? You're like, oh, no. I like Jocko. He talks about training, but I've never trained before. But I believe in it. I'm a believer in it. And so it was I loved that you, who were a deep, deep thinker and obsessive about what is ideal for my kids' development, found the same conclusion that I did, and we were like without communicating, right, without bias. And so when I look at it, again, I have a bias. This is what I do for a living.
Sure.
But you don't. You just love your kids.
Right.
And what I always tell our people is, hey, people don't love us. They love their kids. We have to be doing what's best for their kids.
That's right.
Always.
Yeah, and and one thing too, to circle back to trying to figure out who your kids are. Like, this is the thing that has changed my life. Trying to figure out who my kids are and how what tools I can give them so that they're the most successful in life.
Yeah.
And the fact is that ultimately, if they're not doing exactly what they were created to do, they're going to struggle. And so what happens is we try to fit our kids in a particular box that they may not belong in. And so ultimately, we've discussed there's very few true warriors in the world, right?
Yes.
And so the warrior, if you're in a wrestling room very long, you can pick them out.
You can pick them out.
Now, there may be another 10 people in the wrestling room that are pretty good soldiers, but they're not warriors, right?
I think we talked about this, and I was quoting David Goggins. He says, in a 100-man, I think he said platoon. I'm going to mess with military terms, but 90 are targets. He said 90 guys that are out there, they're just targets. They're just there. 9 are soldiers. 9 are good soldiers. They're going to do. Yeah. They're going to do 9. They're fighters. They're going to do 90% of the fighting. These 9. And he said, and there's 1, and that 1 is a true warrior. Right.
It's what they were created to do, right?
Yeah.
And so our kids, even though wrestling is or combat sports is really, really good for them, we have to delineate, is this kid a warrior, or are we just trying to give them the tools that they need to be successful in life?
Bingo. Wait, go back. Say that again, because that is it. Like, that is it. And that's what I stopped. Repeat that. We have to, we have to make sure that we know our children and who they are and know what their giftings are. And so I believe that all 5 of my children will have great value from being in this gym. Bingo. So, and what really changed for me as a coach is that there was a time when I first started and I was coaching, like, for me, I was like, I'm going to make champions so that people know that I'm a champion, right? That this is what I'm, whatever. And a couple years in, like, I don't know why I arrived at this kind of thought process as early as I did. Because when I look at the timeline of it, it doesn't make sense. But at some point, it changed from, like, it changed from where I no longer was that, hey, we're going to make every kid a champion. I started realizing some of these kids just need to be on a map because it's what's good for them.
That's right.
These kids over here, they want to be elite. Let's turn them into, like, so, like, you have kids that wrestle. You have kids that are wrestlers, like, hey, this kid needs to be traveling and stuff. And you have these kids who are going to wrestle at Division I level and try to be really successful.
That's right. And listen, it's their makeup. It's how they it's how they're created.
But all 3 of them benefit from it long term.
100%.
They all benefit. But you don't treat them all like the one and then shun them because they're not the one.
That's what the public school system gets wrong. Is they try to lump everybody in one basket and not delineate with their giftings, and they've tried, and so it doesn't. And what happens is we have a teacher with 30 students, it's difficult to recognize the differences in these children.
It's why you have to have, to me, like, we MJ and I talk about this a lot. Like, once you've been doing something long enough, you sort of develop some morality inside of it, and you start to feel a responsibility for it to be done a certain way. And then eventually you're like, we've got to spread this out, right? And that's what this podcast is about, is that, like, when there's no wrestling culture where we live. So I watch people who coach wrestling are people who just know something about wrestling, or they either said that they wrestled before, or their son wrestles and he's pretty good, or they bought a course online and now they're a wrestling coach. And typically, I mean, when we were growing up, like, there was one guy that was teaching wrestling. He was the pioneer, and he was a total a-hole and a total prick. But people would be willing to kind of do a deal with the devil because it was the end was worth the means, right? That, like, hey, we'll go get coached by this guy because ultimately, like, we want to have success, and we'll go through him to get there. And so my whole thing with it is like, hey, there's got to we have to develop professionals that understand there's three kinds of people in the sport, right? That there's not two kinds of people. There's the people know and don't know. Like, hey, everybody can learn wrestling. I'm a first generation wrestler. How did we become the people with the podcast here talking about this? And how do we become the wrestling guys? Well, dude, anybody can learn. If I can learn, anybody can learn. So I'm like, hey, let's teach anybody that wants to learn the way, but let's help them understand how to help these people, because there's three kinds of people underneath them, right? And what I really want to see is that people who are not authentic leaders, who are not good communicators, who are not lead by example and setting something for these people to look up to and follow and emulate and duplicate when they become the leaders in their own. Would they get married and they've got their own? They're a husband or a husband, wife, family leader. They got a family, or a business leader. Those people got to get weeded out.
Or they got to get better.
Or they got to get better.
Right, because ultimately they may have good intentions, but they're just continuing to do the things that they've always done because that's the way they thought it was supposed to be done.
There has to be a track that says, hey, this is what excellent looks like. You got to start getting, like, you don't have to be speeding down the highway yet, but you better get on the on-ramp. Like, we got to start getting you going in the right direction, right? And I think that as a culture, like, not just people inside of wrestling, but people as they're coming on, like, they've got to be able to see where there's fruit, right? There's got to be some people going, hey, that's actually, like, that's unacceptable. We need to do it better than that. You know what I mean? And that's where I feel like I've become a snob, like a total prude in the way this gets done, because I've just seen it screwed up so many times, you know? And so there's very subtle things. We talk about the way and how the path is narrow, dude. The path is narrow. And so a little deviation is no big deal if you realign it back to the line.
Oh, you're going to get off. You're going to get off the path. No question.
And so, but when you get off the path, you don't overly harshly judge, criticize, freaking, like whatever people like off the path over there. Oh my gosh. Like, we just help guide them back to the way.
Listen, condemnation is does not result in anything positive.
Right.
Like, Jesus said, I have not come to condemn.
Condemnation is not the way.
If the Creator is not condemning us, then we shouldn't condemn ourselves,
right,
or others. I mean,
if to me, again, like, if you are a habitual offender and we're trying to show you the way and you will not do that, right, and you have something negative to say back about it, like, okay, that's a little different, right? But, like, when it starts to get a little off the path, you just go, hey, remember, this is the way.
Yeah.
Because when you're a little bit off, I try to make those little things, those little nudges when they're an inch off, because if you don't nudge them when they're an inch, right here it's an inch, but down there it's 50
That's
feet.
Right.
And it's such a thing, right? And so how do you gently nudge so that everybody stays on the way, on the path, right? And, like, oh, dude, it's just this crazy thing. And it's hard to get right, man. It's really hard to get right, You're the director of development at A for One, huge baseball. Oh, well, y'all have everything now, right? Baseball, basketball, football, training.
It's indoor training facility, and basically
it's literally the same street, I think. Isn't
West,
the same street?
Yeah, we're in West
20
West
blocks that way.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome facility. Super awesome. If you are a baseball, football, basketball person, if you're anything but a wrestler, you need to go see him at A for One. And if you are not a wrestler, you need to come see us so you can become one. But one thing that we talk about in all of this is there's all these things that you got to get right, and so oftentimes you see people, they have to, as leaders, you have to make a decision about, are you going to optimize for profit or optimize for development? And so there is big money in the baseball world. Wrestling is really like so far behind, but I think you're incredibly privy to this because of baseball culture and that being your thing. So talk a little bit about that, about the dilemma of that.
Yeah, I think that it's pervasive. Basketball, baseball seems to be the worst. It seems to be the worst. And I don't really have all the answers, but I know that if you focus on the needs of the athlete, that it can inform your path. If you focus on your needs and making profit, ultimately it's going to be about making profit and winning. So in baseball, it's either about winning, making profit, or development. There's very little in between, and so we're really trying to focus on development, and we're looking for our mission is Refuge, Access, Unity. We focus on inner city and giving access to those kids who don't have it.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a safe place. Refuge. Access, which is basically the access to the facility. It's 25,000 square feet. We have basketball. We have all the weight training that you could ever want to get better. We've partnered with Leonard Stevens, Step by Step, to train football players. He's got guys all over the NFL and all over Division I football, and so he's in there full time. It's his home. Baseball, we do summer baseball programs, Refuge, Access, Unity. We give great training. We do lots of group training. And on top of that, what happens is because it's an excellent space, because it's a place where you can get better and you have access to great teaching and great coaching, then you bring people from all over, from different backgrounds, and there's a unity that happens that is not happening in a normal setting.
So awesome.
And so that's the reason that kind of drew me to there a bunch of years ago, and just trying to continue that legacy that a lot of the founders started. They put their blood, sweat, and tears. Nick Crawford, Sutton Schultz, Miles McKee. I'm going to forget some people, but those guys were the original kind of guys who said, "Hey, we want to provide access to kids who don't have it." It's so
awesome. I love that. It's like, it really is a melting pot in there of,
100%.
Of all the things. And I think what's really unique about it, because I thought that was very exclusive to wrestling, that, hey, we get all these kids from the rich kid, the poor kid, middle class, and they're all in here and they sort it out amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing that I'm very much drawn to. And so I really love that aspect of what y'all do. Amazing facility it's just so cool. But y'all really do have, it's like world-class training, and there's, the kids who are in there paying for it, and there's underprivileged kids, and it's all blended together.
That's right.
In those sports, which you don't tend to see. You don't tend to see that in those other sports as much. I'm not saying that you can't do it or there's no one else on earth doing it, but it's just not common, right? Yeah. And so I think it's just so unique. You touched on something and talking about access, and you and I have spoken about this a lot, right? Because you do get in this dilemma of, if you're optimizing for development and taking care of the kids and providing an opportunity. I hate when people say things like for the kids, but because it really can be a slippery slope that a lot of people stand on or try to stand on to do, wickedness. I've seen it done that way. So I hate to even use that term, but when you are trying to optimize for development, you run into, you see a fiscal gap, right? And one of the things, I guess the reason I'm talking about this is because it's been very real for me. I know you too, coming from business into that space, you're like, oh my gosh, this is different for me personally and then different for this organization. Sure. It's a whole different thing. But I've been the more that we try to optimize for development, I see that gap. And it's access, giving kids access is costly, right? We just started the process following in y'all's footsteps with a nonprofit. And I'm looking at, and we've already had some people come alongside us that are helping make that possible, but it's crazy. And really the thing that, again, I'm working through these ideas literally right here with you on camera, but I realize we need people who have the means to come alongside us to give these kids access. Otherwise, I mean, the things that we're doing in the Premier National League are opportunities that I would have only ever dreamed of as an athlete or dreamed of as a young coach. The fact that we're in this situation, we're going to California in 2 days to go and train and do the things, but like it's quickly pricing. It prices 98% of our kids out of.
Well, like I think about that. We've talked about this a bunch, but like how do we get these incredible athletes in the wrestling room in the city of Birmingham? Like, you know, the crossplex they had, which is slap in the middle of downtown Birmingham, and it's the state championship for wrestling. And there's like out of 700 wrestlers, there's like less than 10 kids in there from city of Birmingham proper. There's no, these kids, if they're trained, these kids can mop the floor with folks. And so the fact is that it's another opportunity nationwide for them to do the thing that they're gifted at, which is their physicality, but not only their physicality, but their makeup on the inside.
It's empowering. It's incredibly 100%. Empowering.
So we talk about how do we figure out a way to give those kids access, and that's what I'm thinking about is in baseball too. You know, I hear all the time African American kids are not playing baseball. Now I see it. If you turn on TV, you're like, there's tons of African American guys playing baseball, but they're all Afro Caribbean. They're not necessarily American. And so, you know, with the advent of YouTube and a lot of the social medias, a lot of these city kids are thinking, oh, baseball is pretty cool. And so we're seeing a cool side of baseball. It's starting to pick up some more, but ultimately there's a lot of work to be done, and these kids can get a college education, and they can move their life forward through sports and 100%. through sports that are not just basketball and football.
It's a catalyst, right?
That's right.
It's just a catalyst.
That's right.
And I mean, you and I are in complete agreement with that. I'm again biased in that my love for wrestling is that we can empower everybody. I again love wrestling if they choose it, because nobody can tell you that you're not big enough, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're too small, or you're too big, you're too small, you're too fast, too slow, whatever your skills are is your skills, and it ultimately allows that entrepreneurial mindset of I can be whatever I want to be, and a growth mindset of I can become whoever I want to become. That's right.
Become, and this is my mission, and this is what prompted me to sell my businesses and move into a different phase of my life, is I want to become exactly who I was created to be. And so my giftings, I believe, are empowering other people to become who they were created to be. And so help them in that path.
To that. You are that guy.
Right. So
100%.
that's really what my giftings are. And so that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing. And so it gives me tremendous joy. And I'm all about the joy. So I'm gonna chase that.
Dude, I know we're like super duper out of time. Jeremy, you're the man. I'm pumped to have you on today. Where can anybody connect with you or catch up with you if they want more of Jeremy?
Yeah, you can email me, Jeremy at afor1.org. That's the letter A, the number 4, ONE.
Yep.
.org. And you can reach out to me there. It's probably the best way.
Perfect.
And the afor1.org is our website, and we're doing a bunch of other things as part of a bigger nonprofit on that campus. So if you're interested, call me.
That's so awesome. Jeremy is going to be back on. I don't know that I can like squeeze enough of his time out for us to do this weekly, but at least monthly. I want to do this, if not more. Because we have these, I think, meaningful conversations. They're the conversations that everybody wants to have and would like to be a part of. If we were sitting around, everybody would be focused and engaged and loving that stuff. I think it is truly the things that every family cares about.
Sure.
Every parent that's
100%.
in youth sports that's giving away their Saturdays and slaving away, taking their kid to practice, whatever. This is the conversation that they all care about, but is not being had. And so, as much as you will let me, we will get together and have these conversations and share them with others so that we can push the thing forward.
Let's do it.
Dude, you're the man. I love you so much. Thank you for who you are in my life, and thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're the man, bro. Love you, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah.